G'day brewers, Hendo here from the Rockstar Brewer Academy. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a barrel aging program from end to end in your brewery, including setting up barrels, blending barrels, adding fruit, and getting it ready to package. Let's take a look. So here I am in the Beer 30 dashboard, and if I go down to the barrel aging module here, you can see that this brewery already has some barrels set up. What we're going to do today is I'm going to set things up so that we're actually going to add some new puncheons to our brewery. We're going to put a beer straight into those puncheons. We'll do some quality checks on those puncheons. Maybe we'll do a bit of a micro check, and then we will determine if we're going to keep, blend, or dump those particular barrels of beer. The ones that are left that are good, we're going to move them into a fruiting tank that we'll create. Then we're going to move them from the fruiting tank into a bright beer tank ready to package, and then we'll basically get the beer ready to pack out. So once I'm in the barrel aging module, if I want to add more barrels, I just go into the settings section up the top here. And what I can do is I can set beer fill costs and that sort of thing. I'm not going to worry about costs and that sort of thing today. We're just going to mainly be concerned with setting up a good barrel program. Now, I'm going to add some puncheons, which are 320 litres, into our brewery, and I'll just define that size. There we go. So you can see now I've got a 50 gallon and a 320 litre. Yes, Beer 30 works for metric and imperial for our American friends, that sort of thing. So once I've defined a puncheon as 320 litres, what I can do is actually bulk add some puncheons into my barrel program. So I can just type in here puncheon, and the size is 320 litres. So I'll just say puncheon 1 to puncheon 10. I won't worry about a suffix, and I'll add those casks into the barrel program. It's going to ask me to confirm the numbers and that sort of thing, and I'll just create that lot. Now, as you can see, we've now got in our barrel program, if I go to view barrels, you can see in our barrel program, we've now got puncheon 1 through to puncheon 10, which is over on the second page here. Great. Okay, so once we set up our barrels, the next thing we need to do is we can set up some custom fields. Beer 30 is super customizable in that you can add custom fields literally about anything, okay? So as you can see, there are a couple of custom fields that are already set up here, and I'm going to set up a custom field for some plating that I might be doing. So I'm going to use MYGP plus copper as the type of plate that I'm going to use. I'm going to select it as brew specs, and then I'm going to go CFU per 100 milliliters, and that is going to be a number, and I'll add the field. And if I scroll back down again, as you can see, I've got my MYGP plus copper in CFU per milliliter as a number field set up. So basically I can set up pretty much anything with regards to custom fields. The next thing I can do is I can add brand names into my barrel program. So for example, I might have a particular beer called Hendo's Wild Beer, and the abbreviation is going to be HWB for Hendo's Wild Beer. And I'll add that brand into my barrel program. And there it is right there. And what I can also do, but I'm not going to do right now, is I can actually take some of my barrels and I can actually take them out of the barrel aging program. Now, obviously we want to keep records of what's happened to those barrels in the past, but maybe the barrel has gone sour and we need to dispose of it. That's no problem. We keep the entire history in the database, but we actually deactivate it so it's removed from the barrel program. But all the history is saved. So now that my barrels are all set up, what I want to do is I actually want to set up a fruiting tank. So the idea here is I'm going to have all my puncheons full of beer that I'm going to assess, and the ones that are good, I'm going to blend into a fruiting tank, add some fruit, and then let them sit there on the fruit for a few months and that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a bright beer tank, which will be my fruiting tank. So if I just go into my name, then tools, and then go to general, and this is where I can basically manage my tanks, okay? So let's add in a BBT, which will be our fruiting tank. So I'm going to call this BBT F01, And it's because I've got 10 puncheons, I'm going to give this a capacity of 4,000 litres. So let's call it 40 barrels. And its location, that's location number 1 for those who have multiple locations. Hit save. And then what I can do is I can go back to the dashboard. And if I scroll down to BBT tanks, and I can see I've got BBT F01, which is my fruiting tank. Now we've got our barrels, we've got our fruiting tank. The next thing I want to do is I want to put some beer into my barrels. All right, so let's go back to barrel aging. And then I'm going to go add to barrels. So first thing I need to do is to select my cask. So I'm going to select all 10 of my puncheons. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've selected 10 puncheons. I put in the time. It's going to ask me where I've gotten the beer from. So you can either choose to brew directly into your barrels, or you can choose to transfer from stainless steel into your barrels. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a beer from a recipe and I'm going to put in some South African Lion Ale. I'm going to give this a batch number, 220824 for today's date. And I've got, let's say, 35 barrels. And I can put a cost around it, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. And I'll put in, say, 2.5 barrels. So this is a volume per cask and the total number of barrels that I have brewed. If I want to, I can add some fruit or other ingredients in there now. So let's say maybe I've got some fruit or something like that. Anything I want to apply a cost to, I can go and add that in straight away. Hit calculate totals. And it's telling me now additions per cask. We don't have any additions here. And it's going to say, right, I've got 10 casks selected, 25 barrels in total, no adjuncts, combined volume is 25 barrels. I'll type yes, and I'll make those additions. Let's just pop the correct date in there. I'm going to make that the 22nd, make additions, and job done. Okay, so if I go back to view barrels now, you can see that puncheons 1 through 10 have beer in them. You can see that they're not marked as empty, and you can see they've got South African Lion Ale in them. I can have a look at puncheon 10 here, and away I go. Great. So now that I've got beer in my puncheons, one of the things you're going to want to do occasionally is to record some notes about each of the barrels. That's really easy to do. So if I go into record notes, and I can select the puncheons. So I'm going to select this puncheon here. So I can select multiple barrels at the same time, or I can do notes on individual barrels. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to select puncheon number 1 here. I'm going to put it in as now. My determination is I'm going to blend that barrel. I can put in some sensory note. I'll just say slight acidity. I can put in a gravity reading. I can put in my notes around the plating that I've done. This is my custom field here, so I'm just going to say 10, and then I'll say add barrel notes. And as you can see now, because I've done that to puncheon 1, I can actually go and view that note for that puncheon just by clicking on it, and I can see that there are some notes here regarding that particular barrel in my barrel program. So you get that complete history of the beer as it ages in your barrel program. Okay, let's do the same again, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select multiple barrels. So I'm going to do puncheons 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I am going to put them in as blend. I'm not going to put any other notes in. And I'll just change the date back. And hit save, and then I've got those notes in. Now, what if I've got a barrel that I want to dump? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump puncheons 9 and 10, okay? So I'm going to make my determination to dump the barrel, and I'm going to write too much sulfur, and I'll mark those as dump, okay? And those notes have now gone in. So if I go back to view barrels, I've got a puncheon 9, for instance, and I've made that determined to dump that barrel. So now that I've done some quality checks over time, whilst that particular batch of beer in those barrels has been aging, now what I can do is I can add more additions to each of those particular barrels. So let's say I wanted to add some fruit directly into the barrel. That's really easy. I can basically select a barrel. I can select a time, I can add more beer, or I can add more adjunct in there. So for example, if I've got fruit or something like that, I can go and add in more fruit or adjunct or something like that. Maybe herbs or spices, it's entirely up to you. However, what we're going to do with this particular beer is we're going to blend those good puncheons. So I know puncheons 1 through 8 have not been marked as dumped. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select puncheons 1 through 8. I'm going to make that now. And I'm going to blend those beers into my fruiting tank that I have created. And the total volume there is going to be, let's say, 30 barrels. And I need to give this a brand name. So this is Hendo's Wild Beer. And I'm going to call this 2208224B for blend. And then I'll hit yes. Blend the barrels into the bright tank. And we are all done. So if I go back into my barrels now, you can see that puncheons 1 through 8 are now empty and 9 and 10 are still full. Now, what I can do because I'm going to dump these particular barrels, puncheon 9 and 10, what I can do is I can just go into empty barrels, select puncheons 9 and 10, mark the time that I made this determination to dump them, say yes, and then dump and destroy beer. And then as you can see, puncheons 9 and 10 are now empty. Now, what I can do is, because puncheons 9 and 10 got dumped, probably means that the barrel isn't in very good condition. So what I'll do is I'll actually take those barrels out of my barrel program. So if I go into settings and I scroll down to deactivate barrels, and I'll find puncheons 9 and 10, and I can just click here to deactivate them, and I'll update their status. And now you'll see that puncheons 9 and 10 are actually taken out of my barrel program. So if I go back to view barrels, you can see I've got puncheons 1 through 8, but I don't have 9 and 10 because I've taken them out of my barrel program. So Beer 30 lets you keep track of your barrel program, your barrels, and everything as you go. So if I go back into the dashboard and I scroll down to my bright beer tanks, I can see that BBT Fruiting Tank 01 has Hendo's Wild Beer in it, which is great. But what I want to do now is I actually want to add some fruit into that tank and let it sit for a while. So what I can do with my wild beer is I can put in the date and time. I can add in some adjunct. Let's say I'm going to add in some cinnamon sticks, and I'm going to add 3 pounds. And so as you can see, it's now added in those cinnamon sticks into the bright beer tank. So let's go back to the dashboard. And as you can see, I've still got my fruiting tank here. And what I'd like to do now is I would like to transfer this beer away from the cinnamon sticks into another bright beer tank so that I can get it ready to package. Okay, so if we go to the BBT module, and I'll go transfer, and I'm going to transfer Hendo's Wild Beer, and I'm going to transfer it to the empty BBT. Am I transferring the full batch? Yes. Are you doing a split batch varietal? No, I am not. And now, if I go back to my dashboard and scroll down, I can see that I've now got 30 barrels of Hendo's Wild Beer free from the cinnamon sticks that I put in, and my fruiting tank is now marked as empty. So packaging this beer is a little bit outside the scope of this particular video, but that will show you basically how to get it ready for packaging. So as you can see, the barrel aging functionality in Beer 30 is super powerful and really, really flexible. No matter what you do with your particular barrel aging program, Beer 30 is able to be fully customizable so you can make your wild beer your way. If you're thinking about starting a barrel aging program in your brewery and you want to know more about how Beer 30 can help, leave a comment below and one of the Beer 30 crew will reach out to you to arrange a demo. Thanks for watching today's Tech Tip Tuesday video. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.